In this video, I'll explain why trying to pay off your mortgage early can actually be dangerous for some people. And I'm not just talking about interest and rates of return. This follows up on the last video we did about investing early or paying off your mortgage first. I compared a case study where the same couple with the same monthly budget can have $340,000 more in their wealth simply by using the right strategy. This is actually inspired by a subscriber comment. This is a response to an individual named Vinay Deep Alvarez. And he says that mortgage payment is as personal as being debt-free because it is a goal for many people. And I agree. I actually did mention that in the points in the previous video. He then goes on to say that, dear, as jobs these days are not as secure, having a place to stay is good. But I actually think that specific comment supports my point that for a young couple like we did in the last case study, it's actually better to invest early instead of waiting for the mortgage to be paid off. He then says, we can accelerate mortgage payments by doing bi-weekly payment. And I also did not touch on fixed or variable. He said that would be helpful. Well, first off, Vinay Deep, if I'm murdering your name, I am so sorry, but thank you. Thank you, sir. Sometimes when we small creators spend time on YouTube, it feels like we're just talking to the moon, trying to get to you in the hopes that you're on the other side talking to me too. So thank you for talking to me. And yes, that is a Bruno Mars line. You know that deserves a like. Turn that thumb blue. Just do it. All right, so Vinny's comment actually has three components. Will you pay less interest if you switch to a bi-weekly payment? Number two, will you pay less interest if you switch to a variable rate mortgage? And number three, paying off your home sooner by adding a few $100s to your mortgage payments will increase your safety. I think this one is well-intentioned, but it's misguided. No offense, Vinny. It's a dangerous assumption in my opinion, and I'll spend most of this video talking about this point. So let me first address the bi-weekly payments and variable rates. So does paying bi-weekly mean you'll pay less in interest? Or some people believe that simply paying bi-weekly actually gets them to pay off their mortgage sooner. So I wanna show you if that's really true because there could be a misunderstanding, and actually sometimes it feels like that's a trap. So let me switch screens here just so that you guys can see this live, or as live as it's gonna get with me. Oh, this is an interesting view of my head. Anyway, I'm at ratehub.ca and we're gonna go through the example that we created last week, which was 450,000, and they were gonna put the 5% down. So that's the only thing that we're gonna focus on. And in this case, as you guys can see, let me just pop this back over to the monthly, 1937 is exactly what we were expecting to pay last week. So that stays the same. Now, if I switched over to bi-weekly, it's $893 every 2 weeks, but there's 26 payment periods in a year. So that's what we're gonna look at when we compare the bi-weekly and the accelerated bi-weekly, because there is a difference. Now you're gonna be paying $968 every 2 weeks. So let's first look at the actual interest costs. Total interest paid is $136,419 if it's a monthly payment. If I swap that over to a bi-weekly, it's $136,128. Hardly any difference, right? Let me go back and let's now look at the accelerated bi-weekly payment. I'll explain why this is happening. So total interest, $121,000. That means we'll pay less in interest. That actually also means that we're gonna pay this off sooner right here at 2043 instead of 2046 that we were anticipating with the regular payments. So it does help and it does pay the mortgage off sooner if you selected the accelerated bi-weekly. And this is kind of how this is working. Let me just pop my calculator over. So your total payments was $1,937 monthly, but switching it over to the accelerated bi-weekly, it's 968 times 26 divided by our monthly payment, which was $19.37, we have 1 full extra month of payment every year. So that's why this accelerated biweekly works. But if we went to just the simple biweekly, so be careful of this. Total payment is $893 times 26. Divide that by 1937. About 12 total payments. So swapping it simply to the biweekly without understanding if you have the accelerated biweekly solution, or that's the option that you're actually going to, please be careful, because that might not actually do anything for you, right? So that's the first point of this. Now let's address the comment regarding fixed rate mortgages and variable rate mortgages. If you don't know what that is, if you don't know the difference, let me just give you a basic rundown. A fixed rate mortgage means that for the term of your mortgage agreement, let's say a 5-year fixed term, it means that your mortgage rate is gonna be the same the whole time. The interest rates for these are usually pegged against long-term bonds. On the other hand, variable rate mortgages are known as floating rate mortgages. It floats because it moves around with a certain peg. Usually it's pegged to the prime rate. Actually, pretty sure it's always pegged to the prime rate. So it'll either give you a premium if you're a higher credit risk, so it'll be prime plus a certain spread, or if you are a great applicant and you have great history, great credit, or maybe the bank is just doing their best to buy your business, they might do something called prime minus. So what that means is as the prime rate changes, it could increase your monthly payments or it could decrease your monthly payments. There's also situations where the interest rates go up depending on your provider, but your mortgage payment stays the same. In theory, because how they do it, fixed rates usually charge a higher rate compared to variable rates. If there's a sufficient spread between a variable rate and a fixed rate, you would benefit from that discounted interest charge in the interim. But that becomes a problem for most people. This is the fear, is that if interest rates start climbing over that, and it could actually go higher than the fixed rate. So people lock it in and they opt for the fixed rate instead of the variable rate. I know that I didn't address interest rates very well or what you're actually gonna pay, but here's what you need to understand. If the spread is big enough, you could potentially benefit from the interest rate difference. But if interest rates go up and the prime rate goes up significantly over the next 2, 3, 4, 5 years, then you could be in a position where you'd either just be in the same spot or you might actually pay more if you don't know how to manage it. I think we probably have to do a separate video on this, but for now, just address Vinny. There is some merit to that, but it really depends on the case and market environments. Now, let's go to point 3. In the third point, Vinny says that it's safer to pay off your mortgage sooner and it gives you more security. I agree. I agree if the home is already completely paid for. But for most of us, for me, trying to add a few $100s into my mortgage payment will shave off 3, 4, 5 years from my regular payment schedule. Look at our case here. When we did Stan and Jen's case, they were done paying the mortgage by putting an extra $400 every month. They were done paying the mortgage after 264 months, 22 years. So they were safer on the last 3 years. However, while they were making those extra contributions, while they were worried about job security and all that stuff, were they actually safer? I actually don't believe that. So let me switch over to the sheet that I was using and I'll make this available for you guys. Let's go to the simple calculation. Where is that? Right here. So in this case, this was the original case study that we did. Geez, I don't like that view. So let me switch this over. There we go. Looks kind of better. They were gonna pay a total of $222,000 in interest over the 25-year term. They can try to put in an extra $400 every month and keep that same monthly payment throughout the term of their mortgage or throughout the amortization of their mortgage, and they'll be able to pay it all off and they'll save on interest. They'll save a pretty decent amount of money, right? They'll now pay $170,000 instead of $222,000. So that works. But here's the thing. I just want to show you what the balance of the properties were at, let's say, year 5, 60 months. Using the $400 extra payment, it's gonna have a balance of $349,000. Month 60, on this, there's gonna be 374,000. So who's in a better financial position if we're just looking at their balance sheet, right? Well, paying the $400 extra every month, they have less debt. They have the same home, right? It's the same house that they would have bought. So they would have a bigger equity in this case. They would have, what is that? About $25,000 more in equity if they just kept on doing this. But here's the problem. You cannot eat your house. Not an easily accessible asset. If you got laid off in the interim, right? Like that was a 5-year example. At year 5, what if you got laid off? You actually won't have the opportunity to refinance your home because who's gonna lend you money when you're not working? So that equity, that $25,000 in extra wealth with that strategy is actually locked up. So here's what I would propose instead. If you consider that the alternative was investing in equities or in financial instruments that can easily be sold and turned into cash, let's say they had $25,000 in their TFSA instead of the $25,000 in the home equity. What's easier to access? The TFSA, right? That 25 grand, if it was an easy to access investments, if it was any liquid investment, that buys you 1 year of mortgage payments. It allows you the opportunity to look for a new job or new career and the mortgage is still paid for, or if you really needed to, you can use that time to sell your home as you downsize. You're not pressured to put the home in a fire sale at a discount just so that you can get rid of it quickly. That's what that 25 grand would do in this case. That highlights the value of emergency funding, but nonetheless, that shows you that it really isn't safer to pay off the debts sooner. Not unless you completely eradicate it. Unless it's completely paid off, then you'll have that safety. But in the interim, in the middle stages, in this case, after 5 years, it really isn't that much safer. When it comes to safety, I want you to start considering time to meet obligations, right? If your emergency fund buys you 6 months of sleep because you're looking for a career change, that's what it's doing for you. In this case, it's the same. I know we're not talking about emergency funding, but we want to make sure that you're giving yourself the runway to make changes. Now, I just want to share a quick story here. A few years ago, a buddy of mine got laid off and he received a severance package. The only liability that he really had, because he was still living with his folks at the time, was his car loan. And his idea was to just pay it off completely because that way he wouldn't have to worry about any monthly payments while he's not working. But my proposition to him was that he should actually not pay off the car loan, even if he could completely eliminate it, because that severance package represented about 18 months of his lifestyle. If he paid for the car, he would only have about 2 months of free cash flow. That's how the math turned out. And I don't know if he was thankful or if he even did that. Sometimes friends don't listen to you, but it took him almost 2 years to find a new job. So using that severance package to live off of for the next little while would have helped him, even if his car wasn't paid off yet. So again, you have to look at safety differently. If you're paying off your mortgage or your liability sooner because you think it's safer, it has to be fast enough that it completely eradicates, gets rid of all the debts so you have no obligations. Otherwise, you want to make sure that you can meet your minimum obligations in your lifestyle. That's what I would propose as your measure of safety, is how much time before you're out of cash or how much time before you're in trouble and your loans are being called on. So please reconsider that. All right. Thank you again, Vinny, for taking the time to comment and respond to me. I appreciate you. Any other subscribers or any other viewers, I really appreciate feedback. Let me know. Don't let me just talk to the moon, hoping that you're on the other side talking to me too. All right, all jokes aside, I really want to make this as interactive as possible. So if you have any comments, this was not the scheduled video for this week, but I thought that was such a valuable thing to talk about. So let me know if there's any concerns, anything that you'd like me to kind of walk you through regarding this case study. I'd be more than happy to point that out. Until next week, when we actually talk about emergency funds, stay aware, take control. I love y'all. Peace out.